This is the second video in Unit 3. Unit 3, we're dealing with the respiratory system and how different workplace conditions, contaminants, toxins affect the respiratory system or affect the entire body through the respiratory system. In this particular video, we're going to talk about specific mechanisms of disease or injury. How do inhaled substances damage the lungs, damage the respiratory system, damage our bodies generally speaking? This is going to be a short video, and I promise, I say that a lot, but this is really going to be a short video. Just got a few points that I want to make. This is kind of a segue between the first video where we talked about anatomy and physiology and the next video where we're going to talk about some specific disorders and some specific toxins. But generally speaking, our body can be harmed in a variety of ways when we inhale certain toxins. There can be mechanical or physical damage to the respiratory system itself. We inhale silica, asbestos, or other substances that changes the structures of the respiratory system. It may be an irritation of the trachea. It may be damage to the alveoli structures deep within the lung tissue. It may be asbestos tissues that become encapsulated within the lung system, within the lung tissue, and over time results in cancer forming in that area of the lung. That's really what we're talking about with mechanical and physical damage. Again, asbestos or silica causes physical damage to the alveoli and impacts the lungs' breathing capacity. It can also, and asbestos and silica are just a couple of examples. There could be other types of particulate matter, other types of dusts that have a similar effect. We are going to talk about pneumoconiosis later in the unit in another video, and all of the different substances that can be inhaled and that can do this kind of mechanical physical damage. Iron particles, aluminum particles, zinc particles can all affect our body through the respiratory system and can affect the respiratory system specifically. One of the consequences of this, in addition to cancer and fibrosis of the lung tissue, generally speaking, is reduced lung capacity. What we see here are some of these photographs. These are lung tissues that have been, two of them have been impacted. One is healthy lung tissue. This is an example of a lung that's been impacted by heavy asbestos exposure. In the top picture there to the left, we have healthy lung tissue. Over on the right, we have another example of heavy asbestos exposure. Chemical damage, or what I'm calling chemical damage, can also occur. Chemical irritants contact tissues of the respiratory system, but not just contacting tissues of the respiratory system, but if those chemicals enter our bloodstream and they become system toxins, we end up with systemic toxicity. Other organs within the body can be damaged. Once in the bloodstream, it can affect the nervous system, the circulatory system, which includes the liver, kidneys, and the heart, the endocrine system. The endocrine system is that system that's involved in the creation and regulation of hormones that we need to be healthy and to function properly. All of these different systems can be impacted by toxins that we breathe in. They come in to our respiratory system, and pass that blood-air barrier, they get into our bloodstream. Then they can have very serious physical impacts on our bodies. What we see here to the right is a cancerous liver. And this could be caused by a lot of different toxins. We could talk about this toxin or that toxin, but there are a lot of different toxins that can have a carcinogenic effect on the liver. The liver system, or the liver, can be thought of as I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. I think I've got this on another slide, but the liver is kind of like the hazardous waste treatment plant of the human body. It processes toxins that come through our system, and it does a really good job of processing and negating the effect of those toxins, as long as the level of the toxin is within reason, as long as it's a moderate level of toxin that's being processed through the system. You overload the system, it's not going to work right, it's not going to function right. There's going to be problems related to that overwhelming of the system, like I spoke of in the first video in this unit. Now, this is a question that I usually throw out when I'm doing a face-to-face class. What is a dangerous toxin legally purchased and consumed by adults over 21 years of age? This toxin can cause serious damage to the nervous system and the liver. And now, this is not something we inhale, or at least I hope you're not trying to inhale it, but you all know what I'm talking about. Alcohol. There are toxins that are legal to purchase. There are toxins that are legal to ingest. There are toxins that are legal to inhale. But that's not really what we're focusing on in workplace safety. Maybe we should. And there are some companies that are starting to develop wellness programs that are trying to help employees lead a healthier lifestyle, and maybe not ingest as much alcohol or inhale as much tobacco or whatever the other toxins may be that are legal and that they are using on a regular basis. But I kind of got way off track there. But that's an interesting question that we have fun with in face-to-face class sometimes, talking about that. The liver, here's some more information about the liver, and here's this, what I referred to previously, the hazardous materials treatment plant of the body. It takes the bad stuff and makes it not so bad, but it will malfunction at higher exposures or after prolonged exposure. There's a limit. It can only handle so much. But in the liver, within reason, these toxins are transformed into benign compounds and excreted from the bodies. But those large doses may not be processed. Damage can be done, not just to the liver, but to other organ systems as well. One example, going back to the idea of alcohol consumption, cirrhosis of the liver from long-term heavy alcohol consumption is an example of too much toxin that the liver can't function properly or can't process properly. We also need to think about the potential for the biological impacts through the respiratory system. You know, we're just coming out of the COVID pandemic. You could say we're still in the middle of the pandemic or to the tail end. I think there are about 16,000 active cases right now in the United States. Well, let's go ahead and look at the Johns Hopkins Resource Center just to see where we're at on COVID. This has the confirmed case. This is the history. This is not. Let me go to the CDC COVID tracker. That has the daily. Here's the cases. New cases daily. Wow, 74,803 new cases. That's the daily average. Now the trend is downward. Yeah, but COVID's still with us. And in some way, shape, or form, I think COVID will always be with us. But this is one example of the biological impacts on the human organism through our respiratory system. This is a microorganism that enters our bodies through our respiratory system. Another example is the flu virus, the common flu virus. And I say common because we're used to hearing about it. It's kind of old hat. We don't get excited when we think about the flu. But this can be very, very serious also. In 2017, according to the CDC, there were 79,000 deaths in the U.S. from the influenza virus. Then if you go back to the Spanish flu in 1918, 1920, in that time span, it's estimated that there were 50 million people worldwide killed by the Spanish flu. So a bad strain of flu could have the same impact that the coronavirus, or COVID-19 specifically, has had. When we say coronavirus, we really are talking about the cold virus. COVID-19 is a strain of the coronavirus, the same virus that causes the common cold. And so far, since March of 2020, or really January of 2020, in the United States, there's been 1 million plus deaths in the United States from this microorganism. And there, besides COVID, besides flu, there are other biological microorganisms that can impact us through our respiratory system. Some of them are viral, some of them are bacterial, some of them are fungal-based diseases. And in the second industrial hygiene class, part 2 of this class, safety management 4423, we're going to talk more about biological hazards faced in the workplace. Some of you may be thinking, well, why is this really a concern in the workplace? Well, it's a concern for a number of reasons. We need to do what we can as safety managers in our companies to prevent the spread of a communicable disease through the workplace. Sick workers are more likely to lose focus and be involved in another type of accident, involved in workplace injuries. Also, if we have one sick worker, whether it's the flu or the common cold or COVID-19, that can shut down an entire office, factory, or other workplace. There can be millions or even billions of dollars in lost productivity from sick workers. So the companies that are really progressive, I mentioned wellness programs on the previous slide, companies that are really progressive and not just focusing on the more common types of workplace accidents, but also trying to have a positive impact on worker health, they're in the long run set up to be more productive, to be more efficient. Their workers are going to be more productive because they're more healthy. They're going to be more profitable because their workers are more productive and more efficient. But in this video, I'm just kind of touching on this other potential impact that can occur to our bodies through our respiratory system. Now, I do have some videos here that I'm not going to spend time on. If you would like the links to these videos, I can share those with you. When you take the second industrial hygiene class, we'll watch a lot of video clips on not just the influenza virus, but other microorganisms as well, and how they can impact the body, and with a focus on the workplace. We've talked about asphyxiation already, but before I close out this brief video, I want to talk again about asphyxiation. Asphyxiation is when the body is not getting the oxygen it needs for whatever reason. And there are really two broad reasons, or two broad mechanisms that prevent the body from getting the oxygen it needs. That first mechanism we call simple asphyxiation. Simple asphyxiation occurs when there's simply not enough oxygen available in the atmosphere. It could be that there's too much nitrogen. It could be that there's too much carbon dioxide. There's a lot of possible reasons for why that could happen. It could simply be the workers in a confined space is using up the available oxygen, and there's not enough oxygen for them to be safe in that confined space. But simple asphyxiation, there's not enough oxygen available. The organism may not be able to survive because of the low levels of oxygen in that space. And over on the right, we have different oxygen concentration levels and the physical effects that could be expected at these different levels. get my pen back out here so I can make some marks. The first row here, we have what is normally considered a normal oxygen concentration, 19.5 to 23.5. This is considered optimal. We expect no adverse effects if the oxygen concentration is in this level. But when it starts to drop, and let's say it gets down to a 15% concentration, this is where we start seeing an impairment of physical coordination. Mental capacities are impaired, and it starts to have an effect on our circulatory system. Blood flow, heart, kidneys, liver, part of that circulatory system as well. Hopefully it never gets below 15%. But it could. What if it gets to 10%? There we start seeing an enhanced inability to function, a reduced capacity for functioning properly at 10%. But when we get down to 8%, exposure time of 8 minutes or more is likely to be fatal. Exposure time of 6 minutes is going to be 50% fatal. If you're exposed at 8% oxygen for 8 minutes, likely to be fatal. If you're exposed at 6 minutes, 50% of the time, it's going to be fatal. Exposure time 4 to 6 minutes, you may recover with timely and appropriate treatments. The hospitalization would be called for. And again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not pretending to be a doctor. If you have workers exposed to these oxygen deficient types of environments, we need to be aware of that. We need to be testing our air. And if we have workers in these spaces, we need to get them medical attention as soon as possible. At 6% oxygen, coma and death can occur as quickly as 40 seconds. 40 seconds of exposure at 6% can be enough to put the victim in a coma and may result in their death. Then you get below 6. And I've mentioned before, this is often overlooked, or it's commonly overlooked. It's the hazard of oxygen deficiency. It may be one of the more dangerous work environments or workplace conditions that is faced in a lot of different industries. It's not just having enough oxygen. It's not the H2S. It's not the silica. It's not the benzene. It's not what I call the exotic toxic chemicals, but it's just not having enough oxygen in the workplace that is dangerous and is way too common. Is very common. As far as specific substances that could be categorized as simple asphyxiants, carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide released into the work area displaces the oxygen, causes the oxygen concentration to be reduced to an unsafe level. That is it's functioning as a simple asphyxiant. The other type of asphyxiation, check my time here, I'm not trying to do too bad. Chemical asphyxiation is when the oxygen is there, it's in the air, it's entering the body, but there's a problem with the way the oxygen is being processed. The transport of the oxygen to the cells where that oxygen is needed is interrupted. The blood not able to absorb the oxygen. An example of a chemical asphyxiant is carbon monoxide, which we will talk more about. And we're going to talk more about this process where the blood is not able to absorb and carry the oxygen to the tissues. That type of process occurs with a couple of fairly common toxins. And when we get to our unit on the common toxins, we're going to talk about H2S and carbon monoxide in more detail. All right, that's it for this video. I need a break. It's time for bed. I will see you in the next video.